Hi, everybody. My name is Rukka, and I just wanted to welcome you to Blue Health. I was part of this program last year, and so this is my second year helping out. And I just wanted to say how amazing it is. You guys have a really amazing opportunity to learn more about the healthcare field, to learn really important basic life support skills, and you also have an opportunity to learn about different pathways to college. And so today I'm going to be explaining some of those pathways, and hopefully it'll help support you on your journey to college, medical school, or whatever exciting plans you have for your future. So I've created a presentation that I think will be helpful to discuss what the college application process is like. And just for some context, I'm currently in the U.S. and I graduated from college last year, and so a lot of this information is based on my own experience. If you're interested in learning more about me, just wait until the end, and I'll tell you a little bit more about my own personal journey, and how I got involved with Blue Health. But I want to start with the most important information, which is what that process is like. So all right, so there's a couple things I wanted us to talk about today. Um, First, I want to talk a little bit about what those different pathways look like. Whether you're deciding to continue your education in Ethiopia or if you're looking to go to school abroad. It's really important to understand how, what the differences are between the undergraduate, graduate school education is. And then after that, I'm going to talk about how to prepare for university because a lot of that begins in high school, what the application process is like. And then once you get into university, how do you be successful? I'll lay out some of the timelines that might be helpful for you to plan your next steps. And as promised, I will tell you a little bit more about my journey at the very end. All right. So, hopefully, I'm assuming many of you are interested in going abroad for university. And my experience last year, when I asked this question to the students, everybody raised their hand. So I'm guessing that it's going to be a little similar this year. So right now you guys are in high school. You guys are doing your basic coursework. Maybe you're figuring out what subjects are interesting to you. Once you graduate high school, college is what comes next. So in the United States, we've got two different tiers of education. The first is undergrad, and undergrad is college. And so I have a couple of degree names here. So BA stands for Bachelor of Arts, BS stands for Bachelor of Science, and BSE is Bachelor of Science in Engineering. So these are some of the different types of undergraduate degrees you can get in the US. And then if you want to continue your education beyond your college degree, you can go to grad school. And so I'm assuming most of you are interested in medical school if you guys are involved with Blue Health. And so you would get your MD degree. And so just to emphasize that point, in the US, if you want to become a doctor, you have to complete your undergraduate education first. Once you graduate with your college degree, then you can apply to medical school or, to PhD programs. MSc, the first one on the far right, that stands for Master of Science. So you can get your Masters of Science um, in engineering or in public health, global health. You can also get an MD PhD. And so that's a combined medical school program and a PhD program. And so that pathway is really good for you if you're interested in becoming a physician scientist. So you want to become a doctor that supports patients one-on-one, but you also really want to be involved with research. An MPH is a master's in public health. And BSN is Bachelor's of Science in Nursing. So there's a variety of graduate degrees that you can earn. But for all of them, you have to complete your undergraduate degree first. So when you're looking to apply to college in the US, you're looking at undergraduate schools. And so I think this is important to understand because in Ethiopia, when you enter college, you're already on a track. So if you are accepted into the medical track, at Addis Ababa University or any university in Ethiopia, like you'll start, at the beginning of college, like you'll start, and then at the end of it, you graduate. I think to become a doctor, it's 7 years. So when you graduate, you're done. But in the US, they split it up. So you do all of your basic college degree first. Maybe you major in biology, or you major in history, or you major in English. And once you finish that, you can then apply to medical school. And so if you're interested in medical school, there are certain classes you have to take in college, and those are called your pre-medical requirements. I won't get too much into detail about that, but if you have any questions about pre-med requirements, feel free to email me after. I'll have my contact information. But most important thing is after high school, you apply to college. Once you graduate from college, you apply to grad school. All right, so so now I want to talk about how you can prepare for university. So there's a couple of different things that matter in your application. Usually the first thing that you think about are your grades, right? So getting all A's. I'm sure all of you guys get perfect straight A's on your report cards. And if you don't, that's okay, because it turns out that colleges care more than your grades. Like they care about other things besides how you performed in the classroom. So for example, they care about your extracurricular activities. So, for example, when you weren't, studying for your exams and taking notes in class, what types of things are you doing in your free time? For example, do you have a job? Are you working? Are you volunteering? Are you participating in an amazing program where you learn basic life support skills like Blue Health? Because if you are, that counts as an extracurricular activity, and it's something that can make you and your application stand out when you're applying to colleges. Something else that's also really important is leadership. So for example, I remember last year there were a lot of students who shared that at their schools they were involved in the Red Cross Club, in different volunteer organizations. And so, when you build commitment over time, you can eventually start earning those leadership positions. And so that really takes your involvement to the next step, because it shows, a lot of skills in terms of organization and working with people, planning and organizing. And so if you're able to stay committed to an activity and get a leadership position, it's a really good thing that can make you stand out in your applications. And then on the bottom left, I've got letters of recommendation. And so what that means is, what do your teachers have to say about you? How do they describe you as a student in your class? And those are really important pieces of information that colleges can use to assess how you might fit in their campus. Something else that's really important is service, because, at the end of the day, you're not just a student, you're so much more than that. You're also a member of the community, and they want to be able to see how you've been able to contribute and support your community. So community service is a really great way to do that. And then in the middle, I've got strong academic performance. So, getting good grades and performing well in your classes, that's really important. But at the same time, you also want to make sure that you're, filling in all of these buckets, so that it's super balanced. And, when colleges are looking at your application, they can say, okay, we understand what kind of student you are inside and outside the classroom. So the word that colleges use to describe this is a holistic student experience. And that just means that they want to see what you're like inside and outside the classroom. All right, so now I want to talk about what you can do at each grade level to prepare you for college. Some of you might be in grade 9, 10, 11, or 12. So I'm going to go through one by one. So in grades 9 and 10, this is when you're laying out the foundation for the rest of your high school career, right? So you really want to start off on the right foot. So that means that you're building good study habits so that you can get good grades in your classes. Um, and it also means that you're exploring extracurricular activities because those are what help you understand what you might be interested in. And even in my own experience, I found that the extracurricular activities I did really inspired what I wanted to do in the future. Um, but sometimes maybe you'll try an activity thinking that you're interested in, and it'll make you realize, whoa, actually, this is not for me. And that's really important too, because you want to be able to understand what you like and what you don't like. And so some different examples of extracurricular activities are joining any clubs at your school, being involved with student government, participating in any sports, or getting involved with community service. And so these are all ways that you can, become more well-rounded as a student, but also have a chance to explore your passions. And I think the biggest thing is just doing something that you're interested in, because, if you're just doing something because you think, oh, like, this is going to look good on my application, but you don't actually enjoy it, then it's going to really feel like work, And so you want to do something that you're excited about, that you care about, and I feel like grades 9 and 10 is a really good time to push yourself out of your comfort zone. So, definitely encourage you to try new things, and don't hold yourself back. All right, so in grade 11, this is when you would start taking standardized tests. I'm sure many of you have heard about the SAT, the ACT, and the TOEFL exam. Um, I will say because of COVID, that's caused a lot of changes in the college application process. And so some of this information might have changed from last year. So I would encourage you to check with each of the schools that you apply to see if they require any of these tests. Because I know in recent years, a lot of schools are deciding that they don't want to use the SAT anymore to assess students, academic potential, which is a good thing because a lot of these exams take a lot of time and money to prepare for. And so, I encourage you to, when you're, building your school list, to identify which schools require the SAT, which schools require the ACT, so that if you need to take it. And then if you don't need to take it, then you can put your time into other things instead. Um, and so in grade 11, this is the time to continue doing the extracurricular activities that you're passionate about. And as you're doing that, you may notice, okay, like in grades 9 and 10, maybe you had 5 different activities, but by grade 10, you're like, I actually really only like 2 of them. So at this point, when you're in grade 11, it's important to, stay committed to those 2 activities that that you really care about, so that hopefully you can start earning leadership positions. So maybe one day you'll become president, maybe you'll become the treasurer or the secretary. All of these take your involvement in your club to the next step, and that shows growth and leadership. All right, so in grade 12 it's an interesting year because by this point you're probably, ready to graduate, you want to move on to the next thing. And, I know like, in Ethiopia, you're in grade 12, you're very busy preparing for the exam, for the matrix exam. So, there's a lot going on. So despite all of that, it's still important to maintain strong academic performance and your extracurricular involvements. And while you're doing that, this is when you would apply to colleges in the US. And so I'll talk a little bit more about the timeline later, but um, just to give you some like sneak peek, in grade 12, the summer before you start grade 12 is when you would start, preparing your application for colleges. And again, a lot of this information is specific to the United States college application process. If you're planning to apply to schools in the UK, then I encourage you to, research what those differences might be. And if you have any questions, like you can reach out to me. But just want to be clear that this is, based on the United States. And so the summer before you start 12th grade is when you would start preparing those materials. And I'm going to talk a lot more about that later. And then you'll submit your applications um, like around maybe October, November. And then the application process takes, pretty much your entire grade 12 year. And so by the time you graduate from grade 12 is when you would find out, maybe in March or April, the year that you graduate high school. Um, and so once you find out you're accepted, um, you'll start college that September or that August. So if you graduate in June 2024, you would start college in August 2024. So you're applying 1 year in advance of when you start. All right, so now I'm gonna talk a little bit about the application process and some of those important timelines. But first, just a recap of some of the things that we talked about. We've got the standardized admission tests, and so that means the SAT, ACT, and because so many of the rules are changing, in the last couple of years, just make sure that you go through each of the schools that you want to apply to see if they're requiring which exams they're requiring. So number two, letters of recommendation and credential evaluation. So like I mentioned before, the letters of recommendation are they're letters that your teachers or your coaches, basically somebody who knows you very well, who is not your family, um, who can write you a letter talking about your skills and your abilities. And so you want it to be a teacher that you feel really close with, somebody who can say, hey, like, I really know the student and they're so amazing, they're so great. Like, you want them to be able to say amazing things about you. Like, don't ask a teacher who's like, I don't know that person's name or they've never heard of you, like you want someone who knows you personally. Um, and then I also added credential evaluation. And so that's pretty common for international students. And so depending on your citizenship, if you're applying as a domestic student, that means you hold a US passport. And you'll still have to do this step. But if you do not have a US citizenship, then you're applying as an international student. And so the step is even more important. And so the credential evaluation is it's the way that the colleges are able to compare different schools. So for example, getting an A at I don't know, at Undenet is different from getting an A at School of Tomorrow or something like that. So they need a way to be able to compare the grades from different schools, and also how to compare classes that might have different names depending on the school you go to. So it's their way of comparing the schools in a fair way. And so the same thing happens if you're also a US student. Um, All right, so then the third thing is a common application. I'm sure many of you have heard about it, especially if you have older siblings, or maybe if you knew some students who did Blue Health last year. So the common application it's pretty much a website that lets you apply to up to, I believe it's 20 colleges. And so you go on this website, you create an account, and I'm going to walk you through all of those steps. So So don't worry. So you'll go through the common application and you add all your schools, you add in all of your information, you put in all your classes, all your grades, you submit letters of recommendation. It's pretty much where you take care of the entire application process on one website. All right, so then supplemental materials refer to the college specific essays. So for example, in the common application, it's going to ask you to do your common application essay. And so that's like the big essay that gets sent to every single school. So let's say you apply to 20 schools, every single school will get the same common application essay. On top of that, each school might say, hey, we have a couple of questions that we want you to answer that's just for our school. And so maybe they'll have 2 questions, maybe they'll have 3 questions, and then you'll have to do that for each school. After that, you submit your applications. And once you submit your applications, if you're an international student, so non-US citizen, you'll have to apply for student visa and scholarships. And so I'm going to talk about all of these things in detail. So, I don't want this to be overwhelming. All right, so um, I'm really going into the details here. So I'm just going to pause it at this slide so that you can read it for a bit. But the most important thing to note is that a lot of schools are becoming SAT and ACT optional, which means that it is not required to take these exams. So like I said, just go to the school that you're interested in applying to, go to their website and see what the requirements are. If it's not required, don't waste your time. There's so many other things that you can focus on for your application. The one that I suspect will still be required is the TOEFL exam, so test of English as a foreign language, because for international students, they want to make sure that your English level is going to be high enough for the college level, both speaking and writing, because all of your classes will be taught in English. All right, so you may notice that you may recognize some of the schools on this list. And I think a really important question in the college application process is knowing which schools you apply to. And so the schools I have here are some of the most prestigious schools in the country. So that said, they also have some of the lowest acceptance rates in the country. And because these schools are really well known, a lot of people end up applying to them. But the reality is that like there are thousands of colleges and universities in the US that accept US and international students. So, while there's a lot of really good schools in this list, this is just, a small fraction of all the total schools. And, the most important thing is not the name of the school, but the opportunities that you take advantage of, how hard you work, because somebody who's a student at, a small community college, they might work really hard and they might end up being more successful than, someone who ends up at Harvard who, doesn't really take advantage of their opportunity, right? So it's about what you do with the resources you have. And so on the next slide, I'm going to talk about some of the factors you should consider when you're, trying to figure out what schools you want to apply to. So one of the biggest distinctions between universities in the US is public versus private institutions. And so in the US, public schools refer to state schools. And these are schools that are receiving like federal and state funding. Basically, they get their money from like their states. So it's paid by like taxpayer dollars. And so those types of schools tend to favor students who are from their state. So for example, like I grew up in North Carolina, and my in-state school would be like Chapel Hill, like University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, because I'm a North Carolina resident. Um, and so that's good for me because I'm from North Carolina. But for somebody else who's not from North Carolina, it makes it really hard to get into UNC because they really want people from North Carolina. On the other side, private institutions are colleges who are not associated with a state, and they get their money privately. So maybe they get their money from, most of the time, they get their money from donors, basically rich people who give money to the school. And so the good thing about those schools is that they don't care where their students come from. And so, if you're applying as an international student, it may be to your advantage to apply to private schools because they have less in-state bias, and they are also more generous when it comes to financial aid scholarships to international students. Um, and so, for example, like Harvard, Princeton, Yale, Stanford, um, University of Pennsylvania, NYU. A lot of these schools are private schools, whereas UC San Diego and UCLA are public schools. So those are University of California schools. So those favor California students. Another important factor to consider is PWI versus HBCU. And I actually didn't know much about this when I was applying to college. So PWI refers to predominantly white institutions, and HBCUs are historically Black colleges or universities. So most schools in the US are PWIs, so they're predominantly white. And HBCUs, while there are few, they're predominantly those students are mostly like Black African American. And the reason why is because before with the United States' history, before Black students were able to enroll in PWIs, like they had schools specifically for them so that they can get education. And so I think it's important to think about this because your experience, the types of students that you're surrounded by are pretty different, whether you go to PWI or HBCU. Yeah, so another factor is liberal arts versus STEM colleges. And so liberal arts schools tend to have more diverse classes, a lot more majors. There's a lot more focus on a holistic education that combines both the arts, the sciences, the humanities. And then on the other side, there are STEM focused schools. And so those, they might focus more on research, so science, technology, engineering, mathematics. Another factor is urban versus rural schools. And if you're coming from Addis Ababa, that's a very urban environment. It's a huge city. And so imagine if you lived your whole life in Addis Ababa and then you move to, you get accepted to the University of Utah, where, when you look outside the window, all you see is corn and soybeans and potatoes. It's very different. You're going to be, you might be more in the countryside. And that's just an example. So just consider the type of city that the college is located in. And on top of that, consider, is that a place where I might have family or friends? Or is there maybe an Ethiopian, diaspora community there? Or, maybe if, it's really important for you to have you want an Ethiopian church close by, or, if you really care about the type of community you're in, just do some research about the location that the school is in. So for example, as I'm sure all of you know, Atlanta, DC, LA, Dallas, those are cities in the US that have huge populations of Ethiopians and Eritreans and other diaspora communities. So, um, just do some research about, like who's around, because you really want to make sure that you're surrounded by a supportive community and, some like just people who make you feel like you're at home. Um, so another important factor is safety versus reach schools. So a safety school is a school that's easier to get to. Like it's easier to get accepted because maybe they have lower requirements. And then a reach school is a school where their academic requirements are very high. And on top of that, many people apply to them. So even if you do have, A plus plus in every single class since you were 3 years old, they still might reject you just because sometimes it becomes like a lottery. Like everybody is, so qualified that they really have only a few options. Like they only have a few students they can give acceptances to. So when you're applying, just be sure to apply to a good mix. Um, I will say that looking at the list of schools that I have, um, a lot of these schools are reach schools. So when you're applying, do not just apply to these schools. Apply to schools that are easier to get into as well so that you can maximize your chances. And then the most important part is the money. So financial support and scholarships. Um, this is really important because sometimes this ends up being the deciding factor. So let's say you get into two schools and one costs, I'll say a crazy number. Maybe one costs $100,000 and you have no scholarships, no financial support, no financial aid, but it's a really good school. But in addition, you also get accepted to, let's say, a school that is, more affordable. So maybe you get more financial aid, more scholarships. And because of that reason, you may choose that other school because it's more affordable. So just consider how much the school costs in tuition and also do your research to see, what are the financial aid programs like for international students? Because you want to make sure that, if you're getting accepted, that they're going to be able to give you as much money as possible. All right, so it's kind of an overview of how you might choose what schools you want to apply to. The other things you might consider are how they prepare you for grad school. So like I said before, you have to get your college degree before you continue to, medical school, for example, or, getting your PhD. And so, so just because I figure that a lot of you are interested in health, I looked up some of the top pre-med programs in the country. And so we've got Harvard, Johns Hopkins, Stanford, UPenn, Columbia, Duke, Cornell. So these are also some of the top schools in the country. So like I said before, these are very competitive schools. So, I just chose the top ones on the list, but there are thousands and thousands of universities in the US and hundreds of them have excellent pre-med programs. So all it does is, take some time with, Google to see, what schools have strong programs and which ones are, aligning with what you're interested in studying. All right, so supporting materials. I've talked a lot about this already, but just to, make it extra clear, letters of recommendation are written by someone who can talk about your skills, your accomplishments, and your personality. And so you want to make sure that it's somebody who knows you well, like a teacher, counselor, or coach. And it's important because it helps give the colleges more information about who you are in a way that your grades and your test scores cannot. And credential evaluation is just a way to determine how they can compare your class, at Gibson to, a class in the US. So they just want to be able to compare these classes effectively so that they can account for any differences in the class names and the grading scales. All right, so common application. Just to, share some numbers with you to, I really hope this is not overwhelming. I know it's a lot of information. So just, just just relax because you're not alone. 1 in 10 applicants are international students, and they're applicants from over 200 plus countries, including Ethiopia. So, there are so many students who are in your position as well. Um, in addition, the Common Application has over 900 colleges that you can apply to. And over almost 500 of those colleges have no application fee for international students. So that means that you have hundreds of schools that you can apply to for free. Um, just to be extra thorough, I wanted to give you some more step-by-step guidelines for the Common Application. First step is to gather materials. And so on the right, I've listed out some of those materials that you need. So you'll need your high school transcript, a list of your activities, work and family responsibilities, test scores, if that's required for your school. You'll have to answer questions about your parent and legal guardians, and any academic honors and achievements. And so before I continue, just know that all of this information is available online. If you go to the Common Application website, they have a tab on their website that says how to apply to college for first year applicants. So all I did was screenshot those websites and put it on this slide. So just feel free to Google this so that you can access all of the links here. So once you gather all of your materials, you'll create an account. And as I mentioned before, the best time to do this is the summer. I guess, it's Ethiopia, so it's Kramtino. So you'll have to start in, in maybe July or so, like June, July, August is a good time to create your Common App account. And then after that, you can add colleges. So remember, there's almost 500 schools that you can apply to for free as an international student. So this is the step where you start, saying, okay, I'm going to apply to this one, to this one, to this one, to this one. And I think you can apply up to 20 schools. Next, you will engage supporters. And so that just means, reaching out to your teachers or counselors to say, hey, I'm applying to college, and can you please write me a letter of recommendation to support my application. After that, you'll understand the requirement. So every school, every college that you apply to, they may have a different deadline for submitting your application. They may have different supplemental materials. So they may have, for example, they may have different questions you need to answer. And so it's really important to stay organized in this step. So if you're not somebody who uses the calendar, now is the time to start, because you want to be able to have, like on this date, the application for this school is due, or, on this day, I need to remind my teacher to submit my letter of recommendation. And so if you're applying to, 20 schools, it can become a lot to keep track. So highly encourage you to organize everything onto a calendar. All right. Step number 6 is to plan your essays. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. Number 7 is to submit your application. So that's the last step of the process. All right. So this is actually my favorite part, the Common App essay. I also understand that it might be one of the most overwhelming parts because you're writing an essay that's between 250 and 650 words that talks about yourself. And sometimes it can be really hard to write about yourself in a way that's, interesting or compelling or exciting. So I'm here to walk you through what some of those questions might be like. So the good news is that the Common Application gives you a list of essay prompts that you can choose from. So basically, you can choose what question you want to answer. And so what I've done here is choose 6 different questions. I think there's 9 or 10 of them. So all you have to do is choose one and you write just to answer that one question. So for example, uh, so on the left side, the bottom one, discuss an accomplishment, event, or realization that sparked a period of personal growth and a new understanding of yourself or others. That's one question. So if you're like, you know what, I feel like I have a really, amazing story I can use to answer this question, then you would choose this question. And, um, the goal here is to, really be yourself. You want to write an essay that, captures, what kind of person you are. And because this question is asking about an accomplishment, um, or moment of realization, what it really wants to know is, um, how do you reflect on moments of personal growth? How are some ways that your understanding of yourself or others have changed? And so, you really want to strategize the question you answer. And so I encourage you um, to do a lot of reflection on your life experiences. And, it doesn't have to be a crazy story, like it just has to be a real story. It has to be something from your life. And it can be very vulnerable because sometimes, I mean, it's a personal statement, so it's pretty personal. And so you should feel comfortable sharing as much or as little as you want. um but just be honest. And it's also helpful to get feedback too. So if you're feeling stuck, maybe somebody who knows you well, like maybe a friend or a teacher, you can ask them to read it and and see, and ask them like, hey, like, does this sound like me? When you read this, would you know that the story is about me? Because you want it to stand out. If you write a story that you know 5,000 other people can write about, then it's going to be hard to be able to tell you apart. So um you know um be creative, to a certain extent, but what really matters is you trying to represent yourself, you know in a really authentic way. And so with that, I invite you to send me any drafts, or if you have any questions, I'll have my email at the end. So yeah, I love helping, especially at this point of the process, because I feel like, you start, thinking like, huh, like what are the things in my life that had an impact on me? What really matters, or who are the people that matter to me? So I love looking over essays, or if you need any assistance with brainstorming, or, you're like, I have no idea how to start. All I have is a blank piece of paper and no ideas. Just feel free to shoot me a text, and I'm happy to help you with, even just choosing a question to start off with. All right. So, I had mentioned that there were some supplemental materials for different schools, and so I gave an example here. On the left, we have an example from Duke, and then on the right, we have an example from UNC Chapel Hill. And so basically, Duke is asking you to answer two questions, and then UNC is asking you to answer different two questions. And the thing that stays the same is that all of the schools, you'll answer the Common App essay, but then for certain schools, you answer their specific questions. Um, so, um, so for Duke, the first question is, um, please share with us why you consider Duke a good match for you. Is there something in particular about Duke's academic or other offerings that attract you? And you only have 200 words to answer this, so you have to use your words wisely. And so questions like this are pretty common. So, the school will say, why are you interested in our school? What is so special about our school that you are applying? And so this is a really good opportunity to show the school that you've done your research, and that there's something specific about that school that you're interested in, so that they know that when you come, that you will take advantage of it. So, as you're building your school list, it could be helpful to keep some notes about why you're adding that school to your list. For example, maybe they have research that you're really interested in, or maybe they have an extracurricular activity that you really care about, or it could be anything. And you have the internet at your fingertips. So all you have to do is just Google you know, XYZ University, research their programs, and write about it. Choose something that's interesting to you. And if you realize, huh, there's nothing interesting here, then maybe you shouldn't, maybe consider that school may not be a good match for you. So, there should be something there should be at least a couple of like two things that you're excited about for that school. And if you're just struggling to find an answer to this question, that's okay. It just means that maybe the school, maybe there are other schools that you might be more excited about, maybe not this one. Um, and then for Chapel Hill, I chose this one because they have some creative um, secondary, like supplemental essays. And so, for example, on the bottom, it says, all you're doing is writing one sentence. It says, one family tradition I cherish. This I believe, the quality I most admire in myself, the protagonist I most identify with. So, basically they're asking you to use one sentence to answer these questions. So you may notice that when you're getting these supplemental essays that some of them are a lot shorter than others, some of them are longer than others. But whatever the length is, just remember that you want to be authentic and you really want to portray, the real you. So, don't waste your time trying to sound like somebody perfect or somebody different, just be yourself. All right, so types of application deadlines. There's early decision, there's early action, and there's regular decision. And so early decision is a contract. It means that if you apply to the school and you get accepted, then you are committing to the school to attend. So it's binding. So if you get accepted, you must go. Because it's binding, you can only apply to one school early decision. So, if you're choosing to apply ED, this better be your number one school. Like, this is your top school on the list. It's your dream to go here. Even if you get accepted to another school, what matters is the school. So it's a big decision. But the good thing is, if you decide to do a binding acceptance, the early decision, those acceptance rates are a little bit higher, and so that might favor you and give you an advantage. But since it's a contract, you just got to be sure that if you get accepted, that you will be going. Early action is a good balance of that because basically you can apply early, which is to your advantage because there's less applications for them to compare you to. But it's also non-binding, so you can get accepted early action, but decide, hey, I actually changed my mind here. So I think early action is a pretty solid strategy. The other one is regular decision, and so that means that it's non-binding as well. And you also have more time to submit your application, so you have until January or February to submit it. But because it's later, more people apply, so it's more competitive. And so then the deadline to enroll is May 1st. So that means that you'll receive your acceptance before May 1st. But this is by May 1st, you have to say yes or no. So you choose one school, you tell them yes, and then for all the other schools, you say no. And so, this is your way of officially selecting the school you want to go to. All right, so I want to talk through an application timeline example. So for example, let's say that you want to apply early decision and start in August 2024. So August 2024 is next year. If you want to start college next year, when do you need to apply for the common application? So, so sometime between like November and May 2023. Okay, in full honesty, this is the same presentation I used from last year. So some of the dates are not updated. So I sincerely apologize, but I still think that this is helpful to think through. uh, in May through August, so basically around this time, you would be working on your Common App essay, and you'll also be approaching teachers for letters of recommendation in September through October. So, a couple months from now, you'll start working on the supplemental essays for colleges. So those questions that are specific to one school. Um, in November, if you decide to do a decision, that's when you submit your application. And then here's an even more detailed application timeline. But I'll stay on this slide if you want to look over it, or feel free to screenshot it. But the main important thing is that if you want to go to college in the US next year, you need to start right now. So that means doing your Common Application essay, creating your Common App account, getting letters of recommendation. You have to start right now. Okay, so so once you submit your Common Application, if you are non-US citizen, so if you are applying as an international student, you'll need to go through the visa application process. And so you'll need to get an F1 student visa. And so this is a non-immigrant visa that allows international students to enter the US and study at certified institutions. So this is the visa that lets you come to the country as a student. And there's a long list of requirements. One of them is I-20 form. And so this is the document that the university will supply to you. So once you get accepted, they'll say, okay, here's your I-20 form. And when you're applying for your visa, you show them this form because it's proof that you were accepted to a college in the US. The second thing you have to prove is full-time enrollment. So full-time means that you're taking like the regular amount of courses. So for example, you can't take 2 classes every semester and be in school for 8 years and stay in America for 8 years. Like you have to be on a full-time schedule. So you have to be able to complete your education in 4 years. And then they're also going to want to test your English language skills. And they'll also want to check that you have enough money, so sufficient funding, so that they know that when you go to this university, that you have enough money to pay for it. So this can be through scholarships or, I don't know, maybe your parents won the lottery and you guys are so rich. And so, now they have money to pay for college. Whatever it is, they just want to make sure that when you come to this university that you have enough money to pay for tuition. And scholarships are the way to go. Then they're going to want to see that you have a valid passport, and then they're also going to want to check that you have home country residency. So they want to know that you have proof that you are a resident of Ethiopia, for example, so that once you finish your education, that they know that you're able to return to your country. And so that said, with the student visa, there are some limitations. And so, once you graduate from college, there's going to be a certain time period in which you either have to get a job and get a work visa, or if you don't have a job and you don't continue to school, your visa will expire and the next step is for you to return to the country. So if you want to stay in the US after finishing college, you have to get a job pretty much, or you have to keep going to school. So I actually hate this slide because you see all of the money signs and you see how expensive it is to apply for a student visa. And I disagree with this. I do not think that it should be so expensive to get a student visa. But that's the situation. So I'm just giving you all the information. So once you get accepted, you get the I-20 form. There's a $350 fee. You have to also pay another fee for the visa application. And then after that, you'll have the visa interview at the US Embassy. And so that's where they'll kind of, it's going to be in English. So it's like another kind of English proficiency test. So are you able to have a conversation in English? And so I'm sure all of you guys will be fine. And then they'll also ask you questions like, are you a legitimate student? Do you have enough money to pay for your studies? And then what are your plans after college? So interesting question. So when they ask you this, I don't know what the right answer is. I don't know what the wrong answer is. But just like they'll be asking you questions like if you plan to come back or if you plan to stay in the US. And so when you add up all the costs, it can be over $500. And so this is really expensive. And I know it's not easy to get that money. And I know that for a lot of students, they'll end up getting accepted. And so unfortunately, like the visa step is where students might have to say, okay, like, this is like because of not being able to go through it, they're not able to go. So my advice is, if you have the opportunity and you move forward in the process, just try to stay as organized as possible and just do your best to explore scholarships because anything helps. Like if you're able to save even $100, that's a huge difference. That's a lot of money. So once you get to the visa step, just see what you can do to get any type of financial support because, the last thing I want is for you to have worked so hard to get an acceptance and then, the visa ends up being like the big challenge. So, yeah, and I encourage you to also talk to former students. So if you know anybody who has gone through the process, see if you can get some information from them about what their experience was like applying for a visa, so that they can help you out. All right, so speaking of money, how to get the bag. So how to get scholarships. So the good thing is a lot of universities have merit scholarships. And so basically that means that based on your academic performance and your extracurriculars and how amazing you are, the university may consider you for a full ride scholarship. And oftentimes they're automatic considerations. That means that when you submit your application, they're automatically checking to see, if you're a good fit for the scholarship. And even better than getting the money is that a lot of these scholarships come with summer opportunities or they'll come with mentorship programs. And those are really important because they connect you to people in your program who can be role models to you. And so for example, in my case, I was the first one to go to college in the US in my family. And so I didn't really know a lot about, what steps I needed to take and, how to follow this path. And so a lot of these scholarships give you role models and mentors to connect with so that they can help you out. All right, so now you're probably wondering, how do I get these scholarships? And so the good thing is to be a good candidate for a scholarship, those requirements are very similar to how to be a good candidate for college. So what they're looking at is also holistic. They're looking at your academic achievements, so your grades. They're looking at your leadership roles. They're also looking at your extracurricular activities, your community service. So, just know that the work that you put into doing all of these activities, not only is it going to help you get into college, but it's also going to help make you more competitive for scholarships. So just remember this, remember that it's important to get good grades, but it's also important to be well-rounded and to do, all sorts of activities. And so, like I said before, Blue Health, the basic life support training, like the skills class, that's an amazing extracurricular activity. And it's something that you should highlight in your application because it's something that can make you stand out. and hopefully make you more competitive for these scholarships. All right, so my biggest piece of advice is to start early because the process is very long. So that means that you really need to be timely and organized. Um, I'll tell you again, you should get a calendar or a notebook. Basically, like just keep everything on paper, or if you're, using technology, like, keep a document or a list or a calendar, whatever works for you, because you want to make sure that none of these deadlines go past you. Um, and so I want all of you guys to be successful. So just start as early as you can. All right, so maximizing success at university and beyond. Um, I don't want to take too much of your time, so I'm going to kind of go fast now. Um, so first tip is to build strong study habits early. So asking help when you need it, and completing your assignments on time. Basically, just building those habits as early as possible. Managing your time wisely. And so you'll notice that when you go to college, there's going to be so many different distractions. Like people will be going, like some people, like some people are just crazy in college. Like there are people who stay out like literally the whole like Monday through Friday. You don't even see them like come to their rooms. Like they're just out partying the whole time. And like the next day they're like sleeping in class, or they're just having a tough time, or they're asking you, hey, I missed class yesterday, I need help with my notes, or whatever it is. Like, that's a bad example of how to manage your time. So, you want to make sure that if you have an assignment, that you get it done on time, early. If you're also working in school, you want to be able to balance both your job and your academics so that your grades don't fall. So, this is a really huge skill that you'll have to learn pretty early on, but it's something that you can do. The next thing is taking advantage of academic support and campus resources. And so I think one of the best things about US colleges is that they have so many resources. And so if you're struggling, it's up to you to, seek support for that. So, I remember last year I was learning that, in Addis Ababa, like a lot of, like they may not have like office hours or things like that, but, if you do have them, just take advantage as much as you can. All right, so engaging with identity centers. So, basically, at the different colleges, they have different groups that maybe for people who share a different ethnic background or culture. So for example, you may have heard of ISA, which is the Ethiopian Eritrean Student Association. And it's pretty much a club, and a lot of universities in the United States have a chapter. And so, those are really good opportunities to connect with people from your background. And so they had one at my college, and it's really awesome because for Enqutatash, for New Year's, we would celebrate together, and we'd have injera, and we'd have all this food together. And sometimes you would even put on like dance shows for the rest of the school. And so, it's really nice, like when you're surrounded with your own people who share your culture and your identity. And so something to take advantage of when you start school. All right, so being careful of negative peer pressure. So basically, make good friends, which is the next piece of advice. This is really important because, the people who you surround yourself with, you end up becoming them, right? And so you end up learning their good habits and their bad habits. So, just really be careful about the types of friends you're making. And honestly, a lot of this advice I think is helpful for high school too. So even if college is far away for you, I still think this is important. All right, so this one, so make good friends with your professors. I remember last year, this was like a surprise when I was mentioning this because, and I just have some like not that common to have or in Ethiopia, it's not that common to have that type of relationship with your professors or your teachers. But like I said, like a lot of it's up to you to take advantage of their time. And so if you have questions or if they have free time after class, like just doing your best to ask questions if there's anything you're confused about. um, all right, so network. I think this is a really important piece of advice because the best way to learn about information and resources is by connecting with other people, especially people who might have more experience or who might be older. And so I'll give you an example of this. So last year when I came to Ethiopia, I found out about Blue Health Ethiopia, and so I networked with them on LinkedIn, and then I got involved with Blue Health. And then at Blue Health, I met, some of the medical students there. I met some of the guest speakers who came to speak at Blue Health. And by networking with them, that led me to other opportunities. And so, so for example, like volunteering at the hospital and things like that, like there were so many things that I wouldn't have learned about if I hadn't networked with people who were close to me. And if they did not connect me to people that they know, and then those people connect me to people that they know. So just, whether you're in high school or college, just do your best to see how you can leverage the people around you. All right, so number 9 is challenge yourself, try something new. Don't be shy, there's a lot of things that can hold you back, like fear of judgment, or maybe you're going to embarrass yourself, or, maybe you've never done it before, but, who cares? Like, if you're interested in something, try it. Who knows, maybe you're going to love it. So, don't be shy. And then number 10, I think this is probably like the one I wish I followed the most when I was in college, which is to prioritize your sleep, mental health, and well-being, because school is stressful. Studying for exams, making friends, going out, staying up late, all of those things like have an impact on your health. And, the person you have to take care of yourself first is you. You need to be at your best physically and mentally and emotionally. And so, if you want to be the best student you can, so just make sure that you're getting enough sleep, that, you're taking care of your mental health, and you're also taking care of your physical well-being. All right, so next steps. Right, so after university, that's when you can apply to graduate school, so like med school, or, master's programs or something. Or you can do a fellowship. So maybe you want to do research, or you want to, pursue, a program at a different school. You can do that. You can also join the workforce. So this is really common for, let's say you go to college and you're like, oh, I want to be a software engineer. Then, you don't have to continue school. So once you graduate from college, you can go immediately into the workforce. And, I'm currently in the I'm interested in pursuing health, but I will say I have a lot of friends who have pursued like IT, software engineering, and after college, they ended up with really, really good jobs. Like they're making a lot of money, but it's not just about the money. It's also doing something that you care about and that you're passionate about. So make sure that you just follow your interests, and, never do something just for the money. Just try to do something that you think that you will enjoy as well. All right. So remember in the beginning of the slide, you guys were in high school. Well, guess what? Now you're in college. And then the next step is graduate school. So, all right. That was a lot of information. It was honestly a ton of information. And I really hope it wasn't overwhelming. And I understand that you probably have a lot of questions. And, I would just, I would just advise you to do as much research as you can, because a lot of information is available already online. Like all of this information that I put together in this slide, like I just like looked it up. So, as much as you're able, just, try to take advantage of the information online, especially when you're researching schools, and definitely check out the Common Application website. And I'll have my contact information at the end so that you can, if you have any questions, or especially for essays, I had a lot of students email me last year with drafts. So if you want to send me something, I'll try to get back to you with some feedback. And so, yeah. All right. So you might be wondering, like, who is this person talking to me? Like, what does she do? What is her story? Where is she from? Who is this friend, diaspora, whatever girl. So I'm here to, I just want to tell you more about my story, and what my path was like. And I don't know, hopefully something in there will spark something in you, or maybe you'll find it interesting. Um, so, yeah, uh, so I'm going to start from the left side, at the top. So there's a map of America, and the red state, is North Carolina. And so I was born and raised in Charlotte. And yeah, so in 2008, 2011, 2016, those were the years that I went to Ethiopia. And when I was there in 2011, I actually went to school there. So I went to Andinet, for grade 6. I don't know if any of you go to Andinet, but that's where I was. And then I graduated high school in 2018. And after graduating high school, I stayed in North Carolina for college. And so I went to Duke. So I'm wearing my Duke shirt. And yeah, I mean, I was the oldest in my family. So I was the first one to really experience the college application process. And it was overwhelming for me because I felt like I had to learn a lot of things on my own. And so, yeah, so while I was there, I did a lot of extracurriculars. And so I'm trying to show pictures that are related to the things that I talked about. So, for example, I mentioned identity centers, and I mentioned that there's an Ethiopian Eritrean group. So you'll see, at the bottom picture in the middle, you see a lot of us like wearing like Abhishek Amis. So this was a dance show that we did. And so we organized like this dance, and then we performed it in front of the whole school. And it was one of my favorite memories because, we were all wearing our clothing, and, we were feeling so proud, like to celebrate our heritage and our culture and share it with other people. And so, and they also became like a lot of my closest friends were, in the same group. And so it's a really good way to connect and meet with new people. Um, I also had a lot of jobs in college, because like you need money like to support yourself, like for tuition and living expenses. And so I worked a lot of different jobs. And one of my favorite jobs was working at the writing studio. And so what I did was I would work with writers who were working on assignments for different classes. And so, they would come in with their essays, or sometimes they would just come in with a blank piece of paper and say, my paper is due at midnight. I need help. I have nothing written down. What do I do? And you would just like work together and like, help them come up with a plan. So, so this is me pitching myself as somebody who is very excited and very happy to look over your essays, because I have a lot of experience doing this, from like the high school to college to even grad school level. So, I am happy to provide feedback. And then I also included some pictures of some of the more fun times that I had when I was not staying up late in the library. And so, as you may know, Duke is a really famous basketball school. And so they have this one tradition where to get tickets for the Duke UNC game, which is like the most competitive college basketball game in history, like between these two teams. It's really hard to get tickets. So what they do is they have all the students wait in line, but the line is 2 months long. So they have everybody camp outside for 2 months to hold their pace, to hold their place in line. And so my friends and I, we did it, and we ended up winning first place, like first place tickets. We got like front row seats at the game. And we all wore, like, I was wearing a blue wig. We were all wearing blue head to toe, for the game. Um, and then the picture on the far right is I went on a camping trip. Uh, we spent like a week out in the wilderness, and we carried all of our survival gear on our backpacks. So anyway, these are some random moments from college, but overall, like, I had a really amazing experience at Duke. I feel like I learned a lot, and I had so many opportunities, and I did my best to take advantage of them. And so, wherever you end up, it doesn't matter what school you end up. What matters is how do you take advantage of the opportunities and the resources. Um, so yeah, so I graduated last year, and then after I graduated, um, I was in Kenya for a couple months, working on a project there. And then after Kenya, I went to Addis Ababa to visit my family. And while I was there, I reached out to Blue Health and said, "Hi, I love your program. How can I help? I want to get involved." And then that's how I ended up here. And so, I did this last year, and I think my favorite part about it was seeing the results of all of their hard work. So there were students who kept in contact with me from Blue Health, and when they got accepted to their colleges, they let me know and said, "Hey, like, Blue Health was so helpful," or, "this presentation was helpful." And so, um, I would just say, like, just ask questions, and, just really just, you are so lucky to be able to participate in this program. Like everybody who's working with Blue Health, like in Dr. Beanie and Dr. Elias and Haddam, and just the whole team, like they're just such wonderful people. And so you guys are so lucky to learn from them. And I'm happy to support you on your journeys. And so if you guys have any questions, or you just want to reach out to me, literally about anything, I'll do my best to answer my email. You can, copy this email, and just shoot me a message. But yeah, I wish you all the best with your program. I know you guys are going to be amazing, and that you guys are going to be super successful. So work hard, start early, and yeah, just stay, like, just follow, just do what you're passionate about. So challenge yourself, try new things, and most of all, just like put in the work and take advantage of the resources. Um, so with that, thank you for sharing. I think this is like an hour long, so thank you for your patience, and for letting me talk through this with you. I hope it's helpful. And yeah, that's all I have for you guys.